Evolutionists claim the fossil record order shows a steady progression of simpler bottom-dwelling life forms to more complex upper-level creatures, but this is not entirely true. In fact, the vertical appearance of life forms in the fossil record is often exactly opposite to what evolutionists have predicted, with only 15 to 20% of visible rock strata having just one-third of the supposed geologic periods and fossils in the expected evolutionary order. Further, the full geologic strata column of evolutionary sorted fossil creatures is seen nowhere on Earth. Walter E. Lammert, an expert in the field, has observed that the actual percentage of area showing this progressive order from the simple to the complex is surprisingly small. Indeed, formations with very complex forms of life are found resting directly on the basic granites. Furthermore, I have in my own files a list of over 500 cases that attest to a reverse order, that is, simple forms of life resting on top of more advanced forms. As evolutionist Derek Auger confirmed, we are only kidding ourselves if we think we have anything like a complete succession for any part of the stratigraphical column in any one place. Evolutionists cannot reasonably explain these facts. Even in rare sedimentary strata where it appears the evolutionary order is somewhat being followed, the topographic position of a creature's habitat from low-level sea to mountaintops, as well as their relative mobility and intelligence, easily explains why marine invertebrates will be seen near the bottom of the fossil record, followed by fish, amphibians, reptiles, mammals, birds, and finally man near the top. Evolutionists also cannot logically explain the so-called Cambrian Explosion within their worldview. Billions of fossils have already been discovered in supposedly half-billion-year-old Cambrian rock, one of the lowest and oldest geologic column layers, and all creatures found there are complex, fully formed, and appear abruptly. As Denouy noted, in brief, each group, order, or family seems to be born suddenly. When we discover them, they are already completely differentiated. Richard Dawkins said, "It is as though they, the Cambrian fossils, were just planted there without any evolutionary history." Respected Christian apologist Norman Geisler explained, "The fossil evidence clearly gives a picture of mature, fully functional creatures suddenly appearing and staying very much the same." Within the Cambrian are numerous fossils virtually identical to living creatures, demonstrating a half-billion years of evolutionary stagnation. Also significant is the fact that many of these fossils are wonderfully preserved with easily disintegrated body parts that simply could not have resisted decay for 500 million years. It is also interesting that more phyla have been found in Cambrian strata than are present today. In fact, while there are currently only 38 distinct animal phyla, 50 different phyla have been unearthed from the Cambrian layer. There were actually more phyla living in the beginning of geologic time than exist now, which is an impossible scenario for evolutionists. According to evolutionary theory, there should be an increased number of more complex creatures now than in the supposedly primitive beginning, but this is clearly not the case. Considering the entire fossil record, even beyond the Cambrian, it has been estimated that 98 to 99% of all the species that have ever existed are now extinct. Extinction has been the rule throughout history, and that is the exact opposite of evolution. There is also no evidence of ancestors in lower Precambrian and Ediacarian layers to suggest what organisms Cambrian creatures may have transitioned from. As PhD zoologist Ariel Roth explained, the Cambrian explosion is not just a case of all the major animal phyla appearing at about the same time in the geologic column. It is also a situation of no ancestors to suggest how they might have evolved. Charles Darwin explained the significance of the fact that numerous well-designed, non-transitional species appear first in the fossil record by stating, "If numerous species belonging to the same genera or families have really started into life all at once, the fact would be fatal to the theory of evolution." The devastating barrage of evidence prompted leading evolutionist Stephen Gould to admit that the Cambrian explosion was the most remarkable and puzzling event in the history of life. While puzzling and fatal to evolutionary theory, the fact that an enormous collection of complex, non-transitional, soft-bodied creatures appear suddenly and fully formed near the inception of geologic time perfectly fits creationist predictions. This explosive fossil evidence discovered worldwide in the Cambrian layer powerfully contradicts the evolutionary premise that all life arose gradually from a single cell and suggests that two dramatic events occurred during which all creature kind suddenly appeared and then billions of individuals were rapidly buried. Concrete fossil proof firmly rejects evolutionary theory while supporting the reality of God's creative act and subsequent worldwide flood described in the foundational book of Genesis. As evolutionist Roger Lewin, reported following a conference of the world's leading evolutionists in Chicago. Evidence from fossils now points overwhelmingly away from the classical Darwinian view, which most Americans learned in high school. Since this conference took place in 1980, evolutionists have known for 40 years that the fossil record does not support the Darwinian theory of evolution, yet is sadly still offered as positive proof for evolution by our media, high schools, and colleges.